Hello, welcome to stage 6 of the Occre B-type bus. Now, what I need to do, in a previous issue I accidentally pressed too hard on this window frame, and as you can see I accidentally broke it off. So what we're going to do, I also broke it there, but I managed to recover that and I managed to glue that in. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another frame like this to go onto there. Ever a simple job. What we're going to need is some spare sprue, and ideally we want something exactly the same width, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky. So I think what we're going to need to do is get a piece of spare sprue and then adjust it to size. Now our two most likely ones are these two. I think that's going to be too thin and that one's going to be too thick. We'll have a look. So what I'm first of all going to do, I've got my little handheld woodcutter here, which is actually pretty good. I can't remember who makes it, but I bought this from Hobbies, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off 2 pieces of sprue. Make sure I cut it way too long. So there's a piece there, and we'll try this one that I think is going to be too small. What's the worst that could happen? So there's our 2 pieces of sprue. So we'll check this one, and as I suspected, it's about half the size we need. Well, no, it's about 2/3 of the size we need. And this one is actually not bad, but it's going to need a little bit of chopping down. So what I'm going to do is this bit there will be cut back, so it's level there, and it'll be level there, and I'm going to make a little notch in there at a triangle and one there, so we can slide this in, and then the shape of it will stop it from falling out. In fact, this one I might just take down to below the level of the side there, so it'll just sort of butt in there. Okay, so first thing we're going to need to do is take a measurement, and I'm going to do this very simply with a pencil, and I am going to hold this piece against this one. I'm sure there is actually a set measurement for this, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it. Whoops, nearly snapped that bit off. I'm going to butt against one side, and I'm just going to take a pencil line there, and there you can see, you can't see, right, let me just zoom the camera in. Okay, hopefully you can see. I don't know what's going on with this camera today. I cannot get a good focus in. Let me zoom it out a bit. Sometimes, yeah, there we go. That'll be a bit better. Right. So there you can see a pencil line on there. So what we need to do is get a steel ruler. And I can never find one when I need one. I own about 100 rulers. And today I can't find any of them. I'll have to take a cut. Okay, so what I've done now is I've just extended that line a little bit. I can't even find it, look. So if you can see that, I've done the line on the other side, and I just want to make sure that that is as accurate as I can be, at least straight. So that's about 2 millimeters thick, and that's about the same. And what we're going to do, I've got this little bench hobby vise, which is going to be very handy. Now, looking at this roughly, the length of this is actually wider than I actually need. So what we're going to do is make sure this piece of wood is longer than the vise, and what we can do is we can place this inside here so that it lines up exactly spot on. Okay, now you'll want to grip it hard enough that the piece of wood isn't going to move, but also not too tight that it's going to damage the wood. And what we have sticking out there is the piece of excess. So what I'm first of all going to do is just chop off the excess there. We don't need that. And as you can see, the piece of wood is still way longer than we need. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an absolutely fresh blade here. This is brand new, straight out of the packet. Doesn't matter how good your blade is. Doesn't matter how good your blade is that you've already got in your knife. You just don't skimp, use a fresh one. Okay, so getting that straight and level as we can. And what I'm going to do, and that's actually not going to work because the blade is too long. So what we could also do then, I'm going to get my my razor saw, and I'm just going to run my razor saw along there. Now we're not looking to cut this in one go. What we're looking to do is just remove a layer, and I think what I might also do is just chop this down there like so, and then we'll have no excess then. Right, so there we go. So we'll just continue to run our razor saw. Don't put your hands like I have there. Okay, I'm actually going to use I have a razor saw that I made for another project, and that is absolutely flat. And what I'm going to do is, keeping it level with the actual vise, I'm just going to run that along there. What you might also want to do is, if you cut notches in there like so, and then we can do it stage by stage. Don't worry about it not being absolutely perfectly neat. We will sort that. You see how we've just done one there and that's come off. We will neaten this up as we actually attach it to the model. So I'm just going to continue sawing until I'm finished. Let me just finish this one off. Right, so the next bit's going to be speeded up for your convenience. Okay, so that's our piece of wood adjusted, and now this should be roughly the same length, same width, which I feel it is. I feel that's a good one. So what I'm going to do now, it's going to be a little bit rough, so I'm going to get my my piece of sanding paper, or in my case I'm going to use my electric sander because I'm as lazy as it gets. We'll have a look, see what I can find. Okay, so once I've got that roughly where I want it, it isn't quite smooth. You're not going to get it really smooth with something like this. So I'm just going to switch to my 400, and then we'll just give that a little rub. Oh, almost perfect. Don't really want to take any length, any width off it. Just want to get it smooth. Perfect. Okay, so there is our replacement window frame, and that is going to go into there like so. And what I've done, just for a little bit of belt and braces, I've put the side that I've just sanded, I'm going to put that on the inside. Right, so next job, I want to just cut this window frame so that it's completely open, and the way I'm going to do that is just cut that off with a razor saw or saw. You could possibly cut it, but you do want to try and get a nice smooth cut. Be very careful because there is a risk of snapping this. It is plywood. Okay, I'm going to use, I've got another one I like. This one is a little bit flatter. Right, so next job, and we have to be very, very careful here. We want to notch into that at an angle about the same width as the piece of wood that we're going to be putting in, and I would say that's just a tiny bit too much. You can go over because we're only going to cut out what we need. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that notch I've just cut there. Just there, about roughly 45-degree angle, and we're going to do again the same on this side. Be very careful because I've got absolutely no support here. Okay, right, then we'll measure that up, and then along there I'm just going to mark it with a knife. I'm not actually cutting, and be careful because if you slip you're going to go right through your finger, and then we'll cut along that notch until we meet the diagonal line that we've made. Okay, might want to just recut that diagonal. This is the hard bit, by the way, because there's not really any support. Okay, let me just tidy that up with my knife. There we go. So I've made a little triangle in the corner, and then what we'll do is we'll cut this to shape, and that'll stop it from coming out. So again, we're going to do the same on the other side. This one's going to be a lot easier because you can butt it up against the side, and we'll make our little notch. I nearly bent that off. Okay, and I'm just going to cut along there, being very gentle until we make another notch there. Okay, and I'll tidy that up with my knife. You could probably cut through with a knife blade, but I think there'll be a little bit more control with an actual razor saw. There we go. Right, so with that done, we're now going to cut our... This first piece is going to be easy because what we're going to do is we're going to cut... Sorry, cat interruption. We're just going to cut that through like that, and we have our first, where is it, triangular piece. So we're just going to test fit that. It's not going to go in perfect because okay, and I've actually cut that a slightly too sharp an angle. So what I'll do, mind your face, mister, because I've got a sharp blade here. There we go, I've done that not quite so sharp, and I may need to give up for a minute because we have a cat demanding something. If only they could speak English. Right, okay, give me a second, guys. Okay, so first of all, please excuse the clamps. Cat decided to rub against everything, has just broken the two of those. It hasn't been broken there, so it's easily recoverable. These clamps are there just to stop anything from happening further. So we're going to place that into there, and then we are going to roughly mark where the top of this oops, that wasn't meant to happen. Okay, I've lost my support. There we go. So we're going to roughly mark where the top of that is, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this just ever so slightly too big. There we go, very small mark there, very light mark. So we'll give that a chop. There we go. So that should now be too big. Oh, do you know what? It's actually perfect size. So what we want to do now is making sure our angles remain the same. We're just going to trim that end off with a knife, and I've gone with an angle that I think, if anything, will be a little bit too much, and it will require a little bit more trimming off. When I build things, look at that's actually come out pretty perfect. I can't believe that. So I'm kind of the person that likes to nibble away at things. Okay, so look at that. That is absolutely spot on. There is a few tiny gaps which I'm not going to worry about because the next stage will be filler. Right, so what we need to do now is glue it in place before it changes its mind. Glue has disappeared. Be back shortly, guys. Okay, so what I actually want to do today is get a piece of scrap plastic. Now, today's piece of scrap plastic is sponsored by Fan Home and Robocop. And what I'm going to do is, with my absolute fattest sanding stick I can possibly find, I want to create some sawdust. This is a nail emery board. This is probably about 80 grit or something like that. And I'm just going to create loads of sawdust. I'm going to mix the glue in with the sawdust, which will help fill it. Pretty much the same way that you would use baking powder with super glue. That should be enough. You don't need tons. Okay. And then we're going to get a tiny dab of, I think the top of this is all bunged up, so I'm probably going to use a cocktail stick. Now I'm using, that's way too much there, don't need that much. Now I'm using Gorilla Wood glue because that's what I happen to have lying around. There's too much glue there even for that much sawdust. That's okay, that'll do. That will do. Right. And what I'm going to do is keep this the right way round. Let me zoom out, guys, because you can't see what I'm doing. So this is the piece that I'm going to be gluing in, and what I've done is I've made sure that I've laid it down exactly right. You could mark it, which would probably be the sensible thing to do. And what we're going to do is plenty of glue in there. You can put too much glue in if you want, because any excess glue will just be sanded off. Now this is a nice fast drying glue. I believe it bonds in 10 minutes, I think it says. 20 to 30 minutes. Right, so this is going to pop into there and in there, and there you go, look. So as you can see, some of the glue has actually filled the hole, and then I'm going to pop a little bit more glue. It's probably not going to seep in, but that's fine. So I just want to fill those cracks in. Now that felt a little bit off, and there we go. That is a classy repair. So while I'm here and I've got the glue out, I'm going to just, you can see where Shadow's heavy head has knocked it off. It won't be a problem in the long run, because by the time you've got the roof and the sides on, that's going to add a lot of support to it. So just as long as it's pretty much stuck down, that should be absolutely fine. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll leave that for a good couple of hours, and then we'll start on the filler work. Okay, so this has been left long enough to be able to work with, and as you can see, there are loads of holes everywhere, most of which you actually don't need to worry about. For example, you've got some holes there, which is actually going to be used for attaching things underneath, but the seats will come right out to about where that ruler is. You'll see these supports there, they actually help it to come round. But a couple of areas that I am concerned with, this part here is not flat, and that is going to need some sanding, and that's, you've got parts that are raised. So what I want to do is where it's all lowered, I want to apply some filler. Now I can always file the filler right down and actually completely remove it, but at least then I'll know there's a flat, there's a level spot. There's a small hole in there where it's not quite met, and there's one there where I did cut it away a little bit. Or was it this side? It's somewhere, I can't find it now. There is actually a hole, there we are, there, and you can actually see daylight through it. You can actually see it there. So they're my main areas of concern. So I'm going to apply with a cocktail stick and a cotton bud. We'll see how it goes. Now this is the filler that I've chosen. It's probably overkill, to be honest with you. It said on Amazon it was a premium joiner's grade. It's a light oak, which is roughly the same colour. The colour really doesn't matter because you're going to be painting over this. And it's flexible, fast drying, easy to mix and apply, solvent free, exterior and interior, weatherproof, and it's the sanding qualities that I was after actually. So first thing I notice is the top is completely and utterly dried like a brick. So I want to see if I can remove some of that at some stage. You know me, once I get going with something, there we go. So I want to get rid of all that. Obviously where it's been tossed around in deliveries, it's all been moved up to the top. So yeah, I think, yeah, you know me, once I've started, it's actually not completely solidly dry, but I don't really want to use this because it's not perfect. So there we go, that's got rid of that quite quickly actually. Sorry to be sidetracked, guys. There we go. Right, this looks, actually that's quite pliable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an old stick, and I'm going to, it's actually quite thick. I don't really know how thick or thin filler should be, but that looks absolutely fine to me. So what we'll do is we'll get our cocktail stick, and any areas of concern, these may be of concern because there are going to be planks going over the top, but hey ho, why not just chuck some filler in and then we can give it a sanding. Probably didn't want to use a cocktail stick for this, did I? So it's quite awkward to do actually. So make sure that gets pushed in, and then we'll give that a light scraping. There you go. So once that's sanded back a bit, that will definitely be level. If it turns out it didn't need filling, well, that's not the end of the world, is it? And this one is definitely going to need sanding because the piece of wood that goes into the hole is actually taller than the actual seat. Do you know what? Let's try a cotton bud. That might be a bit easier. There we go. That's so much easier. Right, there we go. And there's actually a hole. I can see daylight through that one. So that's all good. Okay. Accidentally got some on the side there, which I didn't want to do. Right, so the next area of concern is in there. So I'll just pop a little bit along there. just to fill that daylight in. See if we can use a cocktail cotton bud for that. Oh, that's so much easier, isn't it? So just put some in and then just scrape it along. If you're kind of doing a downward push, you can see how that's filling that really nicely. I mean, obviously I got a close colour match, but so you can't really see it that well. But as I say, the colour really doesn't matter. Okay, and then there goes quite a lot in there as well. Right, lovely, happy with that. Just make sure all of those, just rub it backwards and forwards, and it's filling those little gaps quite nicely in the corners. Right, so that's those done, and then we'll just work away. Any areas of concern we can just fill. And there's decals and other bits of wood going on here. And obviously if you put just a tiny bit on, there isn't going to be that much sanding to do. If you put loads on, you pretty much guarantee the coverage. So go the way you want to go, guys. But I just want to get that exterior nice and flat. And I think it will make a difference, but I don't think it'll make the most incredible difference. If you don't want to go with a filler, I think you'll still end up looking with ending up with a nice looking model. I just think that if you go with a filler, it'll look a little bit nicer. Okay. And some areas it's probably not best not to go with the filler, with a cocktail stick, because as you can see it's making a bit of a mess. But, and I'm just literally slapping this on, because I say once we get to the sanding, the only trouble is with the sanding is filler absolutely kills sandpaper. If you go onto any woodworking video and you see them sanding, not all of them will tell you, but the ones who tell you will go on about how much it does kill. They get through so many sheets of sandpaper when it comes to filler. Okay, it's actually looking a bit worse now because of the filler, but once it's all sanded down, that looks a terrible bit there. I think that gap is meant to be there. I would say there is, because there's going to be the engine going in and the crew cab. Okay, I think that's nearly done now. I think I've just got this side to do. So this is going to be the end of the video, guys, because I want to leave this for a good 24 hours to dry. It does say on the actual tub, the filler is waterproof once dry, maximum 5mm in depth. It doesn't actually say how long you need to leave it for. Shell life 2 years. No, it doesn't say how long to leave it for, so we'll just leave it overnight. That's actually gone quite hard already. Right, let's see if I can get a better result with this stick. And I've got it all on the top as well. It's not very wet. If it was wet, I could push it into gaps a little bit easier. Okay. Okay, most of that's drying off now. I am being quite wasteful with this. but it's all good. Right, I think that is almost all done. That bit's come out quite nice actually. It's not taken much filler at all, and we'll just get that little corner in there. Alright, and there we go. That should be most of the gaps done. Okay, so yes, it looks pig ugly. I'm not going to lie about that. But once it's all sanded down, because this is the problem with models, there's a lot of do you know what, I think I should just use my finger in the first place. Look at that, so much easier to use my finger. Right, so I don't think my display sanding machine-y thing is going to do a good job on this. I think it's better to just get in there with the old-fashioned sandpaper and just use some muscles and get it done. And like I say, it's the trouble with modelling, especially wooden models. These are generically cut pieces, which is the best way to go, because if they were all cut exactly to the 100th of a millimetre, if you put something in just 2/100ths of a millimetre out, the whole model's not going to fit together. So it's better just to be slightly generic, and you got a lot of sanding to do. If it was Airfix, you know, you could complain about the fit, but with this, I think it's all part of the process. Right guys, so that is actually is that the end of the video, filler? Yeah, no, I'll leave that for 24 hours and I'll come back and we'll have a little go with the sander. Oh, one bit there I'm not happy with, and that's just going to be a case of I've missed inside the seats there, so I'm just going to get some filler and I'm going to run that along. Ugh, this is getting really messy now, guys. Some people would find this really good fun. I'm enjoying it actually. There we go. And I tend to think that a small hole, no matter how small it is, it's got to be weaker, isn't it, than a solid joint. That's going to be awkward to sand, isn't it? Probably won't even notice it if I don't fill that bit. Right. There we go. So, have you ever seen a messy amount of sanding? Right, so I have overfilled it on purpose. See there where the sander is, where the filler is on the seat? When I come to sand that, I'll actually be removing all of that filler. I will be using this in some places because there'll be nooks and crannies I just can't get to. But I think that I'll come back in what was going to be 24 hours for me, and we'll get on with that. Probably going to need some kind of respirator, because how much dust is that going to throw up? Right guys, I'll see you in a second for you, but 24 hours for me. Okay, so all of our filler is pretty much dry. Well, when I say pretty much dry, it is dry. Some of it is really, really thick. So what we need to do is we need to knock all of that filler back so that it's all nice and level. What I'll do is I'll do one side with you, and then I'll just record myself speeded up doing the rest of it. So what we're going to need is some sanding sticks, sandpaper. I like sticks because they keep flat. These are actually cushioned, but what would be even better is solid sticks. These will do the job absolutely fine. It's going to be a bit of a boring job, so you're going to need a podcast on in the background. Obviously I'm not going to play that podcast while I'm recording. Nice cup of coffee. I've gone for the very best that I've got, and I'll show you a little trick later on, but you need to make sure you're wearing jeans. So these particular sanding sticks were very kindly sent to me by the Lord Peter Webster. Fantastic guy, will do almost anything for anyone. He did actually send me a pack of sticks. Let me show you these. So you got a set of these, but you also got a set of these sanding sticks. Now these sanding sticks are fantastic because they take less space up in the drawer. I consider them a little bit more valuable than these, so I'm using these to get rid of these before I get rid of the thin ones. And I've also come across this, I'm not sure if this is part of what Peter sent me or if it's just an emery board that I've accumulated. But now next thing is a confession. I've never used sanding sticks on wooden models before, so although I know the basic principle, I don't know the actual grades that I'm going to need. So I'm going to start off with, this feels like, because that's labelled 80 grit, 80, that means it's 80 on both sides. It feels the same, so I'm going to assume that's an 80. And then we'll do the main, we'll get the main majority of the filler down, and then we'll go to a finer grade, and then a finer grade and a finer grade. It might well be that we need this one and then this one, or maybe a step down to 400 and then something even finer than 600, but we'll see how it goes. So because this is very rough, we need to be quite gentle, and what we're going to do is we're going to knock back that filler until it's practically level. And looking at the way this is going, I think we're probably going to need 2 grades. So knocking it back, keep it level with the piece of wood, otherwise you're going to reshape it. And then once we get down to the bare wood on the highest area, sorry, bare wood on the highest area, we know we're practically there. And then doesn't matter what it looks like, your best friend here is your finger. Use your finger and decide if it's flat. Keep it as steady as you can. Don't hold on to any parts that are fragile. So the seat bit is really handy. Okie dokie, and there we go. And we've got part way through, and our sanding stick is really clogged up, which is where I told you I was going to tell you a trick later on. So I'm going to zoom out for this one. So we have a clogged up sanding stick, so every now and again make sure you got a really old pair of jeans and just give it a zap, and you see that it's removed all of that. I can't remember where I learnt that trick from. I've got a feeling it was Nigel's modelling bench. If it was, someone's watching this and they were the one who showed me the trick on their YouTube channel, I do apologise, but I've got a feeling it was Nigel, because Nigel comes up with these little funny tricks that you would first of all would say, oh, that's quite stupid. He showed me a trick where in order to shine something, you just rub your fingers on your ears, and that just picks up a little bit of grease, and then you rub your finger onto the model part. It just gives it that little tiny bit of shine that you're after. Okay, so that middle bit is just about done, and it feels lovely. There is actually a little bit of a lump there, and that's because I haven't kept my sanding stick level, but that's okay. So obviously I would have naturally done the middle first. So we'll catch up on this end. And to be honest with you, the way this is going, I think this is the only stick we need. Obviously, if you're doing plastic parts, this sanding stick would leave scratch marks. This, because it's wood, doesn't seem to be leaving scratch marks. So that's all good. So, you know, I've got my sanding sticks ready. It's going to make a mess as well, by the way, guys. So look, we can see we're nearly there. We can still see filler on the flat piece of wood. Okay. And you don't have to treat this like a newborn child. You can be slightly rough with it. Just don't hold it on any fragile parts. Incidentally, it's not even been 24 hours, but this piece there is holding up really well. I would say where the glue is actually stronger than where the wood is. So that's all good. So now obviously the proof of the pudding is actually once we put the let me just give that as that. There we go. Look, I mean, my jeans are absolutely filthy now, but the sanding stick is wonderful. Yeah, so once we finish this, we're going to add some primer to it. Now, in the case of wood, there's a lot of debates with scale models. Do we need filler? Do we need primer? My personal opinion is yes, but that is that's a debate for another day. Now the primer does two things. First of all, it gives the paint something to stick to, but most importantly, which isn't always necessary with plastic, it creates a barrier. So what's going to happen if you applied paint straight onto this, the paint would soak straight into the wood, and you may find yourself needing 5 or 6 coats, whereas you can apply 1 or 2 layers of primer, and then that actually that gives it a barrier, and then the paint goes on to the primer. Another thing you can actually use on wood as primer, and I've done this before, is PVA glue. The only disadvantage I find with PVA glue is that it leaves texture, can leave a texture, and it could also warp the wood, because you thin the PVA glue a little bit to make it easier to apply, and then obviously that water soaks into the wood, which can cause problems. So you need to sort of be aware of what you're using on. My craft desk, I put up a big sheet of MDF as a backboard, which of course is pretty much sawdust compressed, and it really does like to soak up the water. So I just slathered on a big layer of PVA glue, and I left it, which meant that it's been nicely sealed. It's now waterproof, and I could paint over it. That was all I needed to do for that particular job. That is beautiful. That is really nice. I'm really happy with that. It doesn't look great because you can see the bits, the edges of one bit of ply and the tops of another. But actually that is really nice. So that's that one panel done. So now what we need to do is go on to this panel, and we need to take that down. I mean, I don't know if I have warned you enough, guys. This is not going to be the simplest of jobs. It's going to be quite lengthy, and in the case of these corners, you're going to have to work 2 different ways. But the more effort you put in, the nicer it'll be. I almost wish I could afford to buy 2 of these kits, and I'd make one without filler and one with. And you know, I've said before, I'm confident that you don't need the filler. You can still get a good model without the filler, but I think you'd get a much better model with the filler. So that's getting there. This is the tricky bit, because I've put filler right in the corner. I have to come at it from 2 angles, and my suggestion is that when we finish this emery board is going to be fit for nothing else but the bin. No. But filler and sanding paper isn't the best combination, and of course I'm filling my whole desk with dust. So if you have any lung issues, please do use a respirator. But it's in fact, I think I'm going to have to take regular breaks on this. I'm not a strong person. I have no problems admitting that. And having done this, I think I'm coming to need a rest. But I really want to plod on, because what I do want to do is show you the difference that it's made. I could probably show you with this, but I just want to get this done, and then I can just record the rest of me. I suppose you could use an electric sander. I certainly wouldn't go 80 grit with an electric sander, because it's just going to rip that to shreds. With a manual sanding, you can really control the whole process. Yeah, that's still got a lot of work to do. But that is looking and feeling nice. It's feeling nicer than it looks, but it is looking better. You can see the sharp edges. So, you know, I forgot to take a picture before, but ignore the bottom bit there. That's not been finished yet. But look, this bit there, I say it does feel so much nicer than before. I'm confident that if I put filler onto that, even if it's not perfect, it still looks so much better. So that's after a little bit of filing, and that's before. So there you go. So all I can do now is just crack on with it. Once we've got this down so it's all looking like that, I'll go over it with something like a 400, and this won't need so much sanding now, because most of the work has been done for you. But that will just, oh, do you know what, that's so much nicer. But look at the sanding stick. So we'll just go over. This is almost a polishing. Okay, lovely. Wow, gee, that's a much better finish than the original. Right, okay, so I'm not sure if these edges are going to be perfect. I think these corners here might be a bit rough, but with the application of the 400 grit, I might just some of these awkward bits. And then what that has done is forgiven a lot of my mistakes. This edge here, which wasn't, I really wish you could feel this, guys. I need some kind of feeler vision, but this is now absolutely flat, and it's quite beautiful actually. The feel is wonderful. Right guys, so I'm going to finish there. I'm going to take a little break, and then I'm just going to crack on. I'll show you the next bit. I'll show you that sanding. I'll do all the outside. I think the inside might need a little bit of mechanical help, especially getting in these corners. So I'm looking at maybe using my angle right in the corners. I might be using my angled head and just getting in there. But I don't think these are terrific for large jobs, because the piece of sand, I mean, look, if you look at how clean that is there, and then let's find an area I've not done, and then we do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, just a little bit. You can see how clogged that is already, so that's not going to stand a chance. Great tool, fantastic tool, don't get me wrong. Right guys, so I'll see you in a second and you'll see all of this speeded up. Okay, so I think I've got everything. There's a couple of little bits there I've just noticed as I said that, but on the whole this is nice and smooth. There's a couple of areas I'm not sure, like here. Let me demonstrate with the back of the blade. So you'll see there's a gap. I can get my knife through it, so therefore it's definitely a gap. The main gaps that I set out to sort out are done. So I think what I'm going to do off camera, because you get the idea now, I did have to cut this in half to get this into there, but I think I'm rather happy with it. These corners were really hard to get to, so I had to sort of cut them out with a knife. What I've done is I ran my knife along the edge in 3 different directions, and then that's pretty much sorted those corners out. And then the rest of it, to be honest with you, I did try some with this, but to be honest with you, I don't know if the battery's getting a bit low or the sandpaper's getting a bit smooth, but it's not really doing much. I think the blade is the paper is just too gunked up. So yeah, so that's that done. So the next step is to get like a tacky cloth, something just very damp, not wet, and we'll just rub all around that, just to pick up any dust, then have a good clean up. Oh no, I can't believe I just done that. Okay, I'll go fix that off camera as well. I might put a bit of paper on there actually, just to give it a bit of strength. Right, this is why you have to be really careful, guys. So yes, yeah, I'm going to call that a day on this video. That's the filling and the sanding done. Let me just double check. Yes, fixed window and filler. So the subject to this was going to be fixed window and filler. I fixed the window and then I've broken it even more. This is actually the fixed window. As you can see, it's the only bit surviving. So look, I'm going to fix this off camera, guys. I think what's happened is it's actually it wasn't quite connected in the middle, but that's not going to be a problem. Anyway, guys, look, I'm going to call that done. In the next issue, we are going to prime and paint it. Before we paint it, we'll look at how the filler is, because once we prime it, that's going to show up any nasty gaps. Off camera, I'm just going to pop a little bit of filler in that hole there, and then I'll just give that a little bit of shape, and it should look lovely by the next issue. So thank you for watching, guys. As always, I'll catch you in the next video. You take care.